Hi everybody, this is Matt from alphamatfitness.com coming at you with another video on health and nutrition. And today I kind of want to focus on, from a sciencey biological perspective, why you can't spot reduce fat. We've all seen the videos and, well, we've all seen the promotions and the claims by various companies and people that you can spot reduce abs, by doing a gazillion abdominal crunches, for example, various products which promise to reduce fat in like the arm area or in the back or in your love handles or in the thighs. They're like a thigh master. There's lots of products out there which make a lot of false promises, and just making sure that the camera's on par. I'm still getting used to this YouTube thing and making sure I'm looking at the actual camera, but okay, so getting back on topic. There's a lot of videos out there, a lot of promises out there by companies that claim you can spot reduce. And the fact of the matter is you can't spot reduce your fat on your body because of what I'm about to explain. Okay, first off, what is fat? Fat is a term that is broadly used to describe, in most cases, adipose tissue, right? So what is adipose tissue? Adipose tissue is essentially excess energy stored in your body in the form of fat, which is basically accumulation of fat cells or adipose type cells, right? When you talk about things like dietary fat is basically a macronutrient, a constituent of food, right? So if you want to think about it in terms of this video, we're going to talk about body fat. So what is body fat? So basically, your body requires a certain amount of energy, right? So we're just going to pretend this is your energy meter, right? And say this is, say, the amount of energy your body needs to operate, right? You burn this amount of energy per day, right? Okay? Now, as your day goes on, you consume calories, right? So you might be at this level at 10 a.m. Lunch comes around, you're popping up to around here, say 12 p.m. Supper time, you're here, 5 p.m. And then, you have a bedtime snack here, right? And say this is 2,000 calories, and this is 0. You reach this certain point of calories, right? Your body only needs this much. If you go over that amount that your body needs, right here, my thing actually worked. So if you go over what your body needs into this area here, for example, what do you think your body does with that extra energy? It doesn't waste it, because wasting it would be biological and evolutionary counterproductive to what your body's trying to accomplish. Your body wants to save energy in the event of a famine, for example, right? So those calories aren't going to spill out from your stomach onto the ground, unless you throw up, of course. So your body's going to say, hey, check it out. I've already met my energy requirements for the day. I got all these extra calories. I got, say, an extra 500 calories. What am I going to do with it? Well, it may be smart to save those calories. This is what your body's thinking, and this is what evolution has taught it. Let's try to save those calories in the event of a famine. So what if I don't have enough calories tomorrow or the day after, right? I may starve to death. I need to operate my biological functions. I got my brain, my lungs, my heart to pump. I got some shit happening here up in this bitch, and I didn't get the energy for this motherfucker. I shit gonna die right here, right? So since you don't want to die, your body's gonna say, well, what the fuck am I gonna do with this, right? So, since this is all burned away, right? This is basically burned away by your body, right? This extra fat or extra energy essentially ends up floating around in your blood as glucose. Okay, which is basically, so glucose, and you've kind of heard this word before. Glucose is basically a form of sugar, right? A simple sugar, right? So that's your raw form of energy, which your body takes in energy, right? So this is also the same as, like, say, sucralose, fructose, sucrose, which is basically refined sugar, like table sugar, right? So this stuff floats around in your bloodstream. Pretend this is your a vein, right, or an artery, right? It floats around everywhere in there. Here's glucose molecules, right, floating everywhere in there, right? So it's basically sugar, right? Blood sugar. So your body picks up this energy as, hey, there's extra glucose floating around in my bloodstream. What am I going to do with it? So what do I do with it? Your body has to get rid of it. Can't let it flow through your body, right? So those, I mean, toxic, too much sugar is essentially toxic to your cells, right? So what it does is your pancreas organ here says, oh, I see all this insulin there in response, all this glucose there, which is by accident. It sees all this glucose there. So in response to all this glucose, I need to get rid of it. So what do I do with it? So this guy releases insulin. Whoop. So you get these little insulin molecules in here. Okay? And insulin molecules are basically like little taxi cabs. And what they do is insulin molecules bind to the glucose in your blood. Okay? And what it does is it shuffles that essentially into cells for energy use, right? So you may have a cell here, say a brain cell that requires some energy. Little insulin here is going to deliver this energy to the cell, and then it's going to get used. And as a result of that, it's going to produce some byproducts, usually like water, right, H2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2, right? So these are the outputs, and then it'll generate some heat too, right? So essentially, with thermogenesis occurring here, right? Now, what happens is if you got excess glucose in your blood and your tissues cannot burn them anymore, so your metabolism essentially has used up all the energy it needs, and there's extra energy, this will actually, instead of going into cells, it actually gets shuffled into storage, which is adipose tissue, which brings me to the next thing. This is a fat cell. This big blob here, right? And inside this fat cell, energy is stored in the form of triglycerides. So triglyceride right here. This is a fat cell, right? I am a fat cell. Okay? Sorry for my very watered down science. So you got a fat cell, millions of them, basically millions of them, and these things like go everywhere. So like, they may be small on their own, but you got millions of them everywhere, right? So a lot of this is determined by genetics and like your previous eating habits and whatnot, but it's stored everywhere in your arms and your legs and your stomach, everywhere, and under your whole body, right? And it's stored essentially in two places, right? So you got V for visceral, okay, and then subcutaneous, subcutaneous. Okay, basically there's two broad categorizations of where fat is, right? Visceral fat is like inside of your body, right? So it's in between your organs, like up in between your liver, in your liver, between your kidneys and your stomach, all just jam-packed like fucking underneath there, like usually behind like the abdomen and everything else, right? That stuff's really bad, right? That fat actually predisposes you to like cardiac issues and heart issues and things like that, and diseases, obesity-related diseases, right? And then you got subcutaneous fat, which basically is the fat which is kind of under your skin, right? So you get this fat coming from inside you, like deep inside you, as well as under your skin, and stored in these fat cells, right? Under triglycerides, essentially, right? So when your body becomes depleted, say, of glucose, so your bloodstream stays empty, right? Okay. Hey, there's going to be a signal to fat cells to start releasing that energy, okay? It releases that energy in the form of fatty acids, all right? So basically, you get these released up here into fatty acids, right? Fatty acids. So these little fatty acids now float through your blood, okay? So this gets broken down slowly into fatty acids, okay? And the fatty acids are distributed through your whole body using your blood streams, so your veins and your arteries, and your capillaries and your skin, and everything has like a huge super highway of transport, right? We're gonna get this energy everywhere because like it needs to go everywhere. Energy is needed everywhere, by your skin, by your muscles, by your brain tissue, by your digestive, by your organs, by everything. It requires this energy, and it gets there using your blood system. It's like a major highway, right? Think of the United States. It's like fatty acids are like the cars, right? Transporting energy everywhere. You are the energy inside the car, and you're going to go places, you're going to do things, right? It's basically, that's kind of what happens here, right? So this thing releases these fatty acids into the bloodstream right here. So here we go, little fatty acids everywhere, right? Okay. And as a result, this thing starts to shrink slowly over time, right? Because you think you got millions of these fat cells, right? Now, since it's getting pulled out of fat cells, it's not like it's pulling it out of one area. It isn't like your body, since your blood runs everywhere, right? It doesn't pull it out of like just your legs or your stomach or your arms first, and then your neck and then your face. It pulled it from like kind of everywhere. Also depending on how well the blood flow is to that area, right? So like the blood flow is really good, say, so like, for example, like to certain areas of your body, that'll improve the fat deposits coming out of the fat cells, right? So it's going to transport everywhere to the tissues which need that energy. So your muscles, for example, right? You're burning more energy, right? Because it's going to use that, right? As a result, this shrinks, right? So, I mean, if you think of it in terms of that way, as your body being basically a big network of veins, right? Like everything up to your, I don't know, everything up to your head, your arms, everything down here into your midsection, to your legs, everywhere, right? And it's just fats everywhere in here, and it's just gonna pull it from everywhere. Like the blood's just gonna flow everywhere, therefore it's gonna pull it from everywhere kind of at the same time, right? So that's kind of why your whole body kind of decreases, right, at the same time, right? Because it doesn't pull it from one spot. It's just simply because of the way we're constructed, right? That we're not meant by doing anything. So let me just take a second. If you look at like basically your body, right? So like, say you have like this is why you can't spot reduce. So for example, say you got like your muscles here, right? Here's your abdominal muscles, right? Your head's up here, right? Okay. What do you think's on top of your abdominal muscles? Most cases, right? You got fat, right? All kinds of fat kind of layered up in there, everywhere. It's on top, right? That's where it likes to start. This is subcutaneous fat, right? And then like, say this is your abdominal muscle here, and here's some of your organs up in here, right? Then you get more fat. Check it out. You get more fat all inside here, right? So this is all fat. This is your intestines and organs in there. And then you got your skin. Okay, you got your skin up here, right? Now, your body is not like your body's not going to like pick this area first before that or that. It depends where the blood flows, right? So like generally speaking, like a lot of visceral fat gets burnt first, more higher quantity if you think about it that way, simply because it's closer in proximity to the organs, so there's a lot of blood flow going on there, right? So you'll find that people who lose weight first will lose a lot of weight, but they may not look leaner on the surface simply because the visceral fat is getting burned away. And generally it is easier to burn visceral fat than subcutaneous fat. But once the visceral fat has been burnt away, your body will switch to burning more subcutaneous fat, which is this fat underneath the skin, right? Now, since blood vessels are kind of running everywhere, like up through capillaries, down to, say this is like a main channel here, right? If there's a main vein, like the main highway here, right? All in branching up in the veins and capillaries, which branch out to all the fat cells, everything, right? It's all going to pull, blood's going to flow everywhere through those cells. Like all the cells in your body that's alive is alive because it's getting blood flow and oxygen, right? To stay alive. Every single cell, even if it's a small amount of blood flow, it's getting it, right? So think of it in terms of my arm would be like the main highway, and then all my little fingers are like capillaries, and at the end, say I had like a gazillion fingers, would be like a fat cell, right? It's just gonna suck slowly like the triglycerides out of those fat cells into fatty acids and transport to the main trunk and just transport it all through the rest of the body until it's burnt, right? Whatever's not burnt gets redistributed as fat, right? So if you don't use the energy, it gets restored as fat, right? As we've shown here, right? So this fat cell essentially grows and shrinks like a balloon, right? And these fat cells are everywhere, right? So the way it's designed is to work this way. It's not designed to burn one area at a time. So even if you worked, say this is your muscle underneath here, like just like that photo there. This is your abdominal muscles, and you got the fat here on the top, right? And your skin's just a small little layer on top of that, even. So that's skin. This is muscle, and this is fat deposits, right? This is just subcutaneous, right? So this is fat. Okay, that's all fat there. Okay, this is all muscle. Okay, muscle's metabolically active mechanical tissue, I like to think of it as. So it actually does something, it moves, right? You can control it through your central nervous system. Fat, on the other hand, is simply a storage mechanism for energy, basically. If you do a gazillion crunches, you're simply going to work, obviously this is pretty common sense, you're only going to work this area. This area may get stronger and more, able to do more reps and more weight and handle more resistance and fatigue less, right? And it may even grow in size, right? Because of, being an anabolic kind of thing, right? If you're eating more calories, you're going to grow, muscles growing, right? But if you don't get rid of this here, it's not going to make a difference here, right? And you can't spot reduce by doing more crunches, because it's not just going to take the energy from here. The blood that flows through this fat and these muscles flow through all the rest of your body too, right? It's going to flow to all the rest of your body, so it's going to pull energy and shuffle energy from everywhere, right? So if you're doing a crunch like this, like say the little small amount of energy that is burning just to contract could be triglycerides that was pulled from your neck or your freaking back, right? It's not pulled from the area right above it. So doing like a gazillion crunches like that is not going to help it. Same thing as doing a gazillion bicep curls isn't going to, kind of burn the fat on the biceps either. Now, this doesn't work that way, right? Body takes energy everywhere equally at the same time, right? So I hope that kind of explains it. Fat cell stores energy as triglycerides. Triglycerides are released into the bloodstream as fatty acids, which circulate universally everywhere. Shuffled into the cells as energy, is burnt off, produces carbon dioxide and water as basically byproducts. You actually breathe out a lot of the fat. You actually breathe out a lot of the fat in the form of carbon dioxide in your through respiration, right? Because that's why it's called fat oxidation, right? So essentially the fat is reacted chemically with oxygen in the cell, which releases energy for the cell, which also produces these byproducts, right? But basically that's essentially it. Eat too much, it gets stored. Don't eat enough, you start pulling from the fat cells, right? So you eat too much, it gets stored as glucose, goes into the cell. You eat too little, say you eat only this much, okay? It's gonna start pulling stuff out of the fat cells because it needs that energy to survive, right? Because it still needs this. Like you haven't changed that. Like your BMR, your TDEE still hasn't changed, right? You still need that energy. You're gonna get it one way or the other. You're gonna get it through food or you're gonna get it through your energy stores in the fat, right? Essentially, preferably from fat, right? If you're trying to cut fat, right? So this is essentially my watered down redneck overview of how fat loss works. I hope it's been helpful. If you have any questions, comments, corrections even, I'm open for corrections. I'm not a fucking scientist. I'm not a dietitian. Hell, I'm not even a fucking professional in fitness. I just do this as a hobby. But I hope this helps someone to understand how the energy systems kind of work when it comes to fat from a very high level. If you're interested in more, I'll put some links in the description box, Wikipedia articles, fatty acid oxidation. There's a lot on the internet about it if you want to know the specifics. Visit me at alphamatfitness.com, subscribe and like. Thanks.